Hello and welcome. My name is Zaffar Iqbal, and you are watching the Mojo story. Two cousins, aged 4 and 16 years, were killed in an IED blast in the Dangri village of Rajouri. Bihan Kumar and Samiksha Sharma belonged to the Dangri village. Six others were injured in that IED blast. The blast occurred a day after terrorists shot four people in the same area and injured several others. Now, Lieutenant General, this has raised some questions. Why did the IED miss the scanning that was carried out by the security forces? The area had already been cordoned off after the terror attack, and the search operation was underway. Now, leaders across political parties have condemned the attack. Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha went to Rajouri. He met with the families of the people who were targeted by militants. He said that terror attack will be avenged with full force. He also said that an inquiry will be initiated to investigate the security lapse. Uh, uh, Kashmir-based political parties have condemned the attack. There have been statements from National Conference President Farooq Abdullah and also Mehbooba Mufti. To discuss this, we are joined today by an eminent panel. We're joined by Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni. He joins us. Welcome to the show, sir. We're also joined by uh, Ifra Jan, who represents the National Conference. We are also joined by R.S. Pathania from the BJP, and we are joined by Zaffar Chaudhry, who's a commentator and a senior journalist based in Jammu. Welcome all to the show. If I may start with you, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, this does not look like a normal attack in the sense that here people of a particular community were targeted. The militants escaped from the scene, and but they had planted an IED which went off the next day, in which these two children were killed. This looks like a different strategy that was adopted by them.
Thank you, Zaffar. What really happens is because you find that this particular area, which is absolutely forested and the terrain is extremely difficult, and these kind of target killings have been there in Rajouri for some time. If you notice
Yeah.
that during Independence Day, some days after that, we had a Fidayeen attack over there in which we lost about five soldiers. Then you had subsequently again an attack that took place a few days back. It was said
Yeah.
that someone which were not unknown people killed two people over there. And now we had another
Yes.
attack by these terrorists getting onto three families, and then subsequently this ID blast that had taken place. This kind of a thing, well, it reflects a lot of things. You can't just
Yeah.
say why such a thing has happened, but
Yeah.
definitely these kind of target killings, targeting a particular community is definitely sad because after all, Rajouri as a district demographically has about 60% plus Muslims, but Rajouri town per se and the Dangri village per se have Hindus
Yeah.
in majority. So you
Right.
have this kind of a thing which is happening, which shouldn't happen because after you find, but then there is a reason for all of it. You find that the militants are on the back foot in the valley itself. You find that a lot of sea change in valley in terms of tourism is concerned, in terms of development is concerned, a whole lot of activities that are taking place over there in the valley. So probably to sensationalize, to be able to draw the attention of the people around that the militancy is not dead, and then you have the
Yeah.
ISI, which is obviously operating in which
Yeah.
talks in terms of their own firm footing, the way they go about in indoctrination, in radicalization, in
Yes.
narco terrorism. Well, the ISI would do. After all, Pakistan is our enemy. Then Pakistan would do what the enemy would want to do. Always use
Okay.
terrorism as an instrument of state policy. So let's not get into
Yeah.
that. They
Yeah.
will do
Yes.
what they were supposed to do, and they're good at it. But within
Yes.
us, I think it's very essential that we must all be on the same page, at least on issues of terrorism, issues of
Yeah.
militancy that is taking place, and nothing like this can ever sort of you can find it flourishing unless
Yeah.
there's some support which comes to it, whether it is the local support that is coming to it,
Yes.
because all these requires financial support, it
Right.
requires intelligence, it requires
Yes.
logistics, it
Yes.
requires operations, it requires secrecy. So all of it
Yes.
is being done in such a manner that it led to minority killing and of course
Yes.
instilling fear. and how everybody perceives that there'll be
Right.
migration.
That
Well,
that looks like
definitely,
that looks like an obvious reason. But coming to you, Zaffar Chaudhry, uh, one could sense that there is a security lapse. There was this attack, and the next day that IED went off. Generally, the area is cordoned off. There is a scanning that happens. There is the search operation that started. But then there was this trap. The IED went off, and that caused more damage. That caused more casualties.
So, well, this entire attack and the subsequent happening that happened the next morning, which took
Yeah.
lives of two miners, appear to be a very, very carefully planned and calibrated for a very big impact. Because the
Yeah.
first evening's attack is, it's near to a massacre, and that's to draw attention towards Jammu region. This appears to be a very carefully planned incident. And, in terrorism, there is always an element of surprise because whatever amount of preparedness you have to deal with the terrorism,
Yeah.
but they would strike in a certain way where the security forces would be, caught completely unaware. That's what
Yeah.
exactly happened in this Rajouri incident. But one thing one could clearly see that this was not limited to that evening's attack, the planting of IED to
Yeah.
go after next morning, because whosoever had planned this attack would know that after an attack of this magnitude, senior officers, probably the lieutenant governor, DG, and other people, at least the
Yeah.
deputy commissioner of the district and the superintendent of police would be rushing
Yeah.
to the area the next morning so that more casualties could take place, some high profile killings could take place, and there is a discussion, there is a ripple effect across the country that an
Yeah.
incident of such a magnitude has happened. So lapses
Yeah.
are very clear, and I think that has been admitted by the security brass, and the lieutenant governor has also talked about that
Yes.
this needs to be investigated. A lot of things have yet to come from the ground because this place where the incident has happened is not very far away from Rajouri town. What I could gather immediately over last 36 hours is that when this thing happened, people started rushing the bodies to the town, and the entire attention was towards the hospital because that was a moment
Yes.
probably when an appropriate decision was not taken that some of the people they shift the bodies to hospital. The entire attention was toward the hospital and the management of the panic. Adequate deployment was not done toward the village to catch the terrorists within a small. They would have run away a few
Yeah.
kilometers by then. So
Yeah.
that did not
Yeah.
happen. So now this is 2 days now, and there is still no clue of the terrorists. And the police they have announced a reward of 10 lakh rupees, who is able to, which
Yes.
means that there has not been any adequate intelligence till this time to find out that where they vanished.
So all those lapses must be looked
Very
into,
clear,
and
very clear,
yeah, all
very
those
clear.
lapses, and Lieutenant Governor already said that an investigation will be started. But coming to the representatives of political parties, now, but before that, we'd like to play the soundbite of Ravinder Rana, the president of the state BJP. He was among the first leaders who was at the spot and who spoke at that very point in time. If you can play that soundbite.
कायर पाकिस्तानी आतंकवादियों ने बहुत बड़ा जघन्य अपराध किया है। जम्मू कश्मीर के सीमावर्ती जिले राजौरी के ढांगरी गांव में मानवता का कत्ल, इंसानियत का कत्ल पाकिस्तान के कायर आतंकवादियों ने किया है। यह बहुत बड़ा जघन्य अपराध, यह बहुत बड़ा अत्याचार और महापाप पाकिस्तान के कायर और दरिंदे आतंकवादियों ने राजौरी के ढांगरी गांव में किया है। ढांगरी गांव नियंत्रण रेखा के ऊपर एलओसी के साथ सटा एक गांव है जहां के लोग बहुत देशभक्त, ईमानदार और देश के वफादार लोग हैं। कायर पाकिस्तानी
Yes. Patania Saab, if you can hear me, the BJP had said that after the abrogation of Article 370, situation has markedly improved across Jammu and Kashmir. There has been a reduction in these attacks, but we don't seem to see that on the ground. This is one example of that.
Mr. Iqbal, first of all, my heart goes out to the families of these terror victims who have suffered this uncalled for and unjustified and inhuman, absolutely inhuman,
Yeah.
this act of a terror.
Yeah.
Now, may I please refer to the statement of the Union government on the floor of the Parliament, whereby statistics have come to reveal
Yeah.
the total shell life of the militant, the total number of militants neutralized, the
Yeah.
quantum of collateral damage, and all that. Now, let me come to the press conference of the Director General of Police on 31st of December. So everybody, every rational man has comes to believe that there is a considerable decline in the militancy cases. There's a swoop on Hawala channels. There's a swoop on the financing modes of the militancy. You have seen even
Yeah.
the houses of the militants who have fled across to that side of the border, creating disturbances on the Jammu and Kashmir soil. Their houses were also,
Yeah.
although they were standing on a state land, that's another aspect of the matter. So my point remains that Jammu and Kashmir, and particularly Bharat Sarkar, has been fighting a decisive battle against terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, and this decisive battle is on its last leg. Terrorism is virtually on its last legs in Jammu and Kashmir. 2 points need to be taken care of: that record number of tourists in Jammu and Kashmir, Gulmarg, Pahalgam, everywhere. And yes, I have seen 3 days before that in the year 2022, almost 1 crore, 91 or 92 lakhs of pilgrims in Shri Mata Vaishno Devi. So this is an utter display of frustration, desperation, and an urge to make their presence felt by the militant handlers in Jammu and Kashmir. The fact remains that militancy has not been reduced to a knot. Pakistan has been disturbing,
Yes.
fomenting trouble in the territory of Jammu and Kashmir since the past so many decades. So, if I'm making such a statement that Jammu and Kashmir has become terror-free, that's not the case. So, this is
Yes.
a sheer
Yes.
act of frustration, sheer act of
Yes.
desperation to make their presence felt on the Jammu and Kashmir. But as
Uh,
I take the cue from General Saab, Kulkarni Saab, that we should be on the same page. We need
yes.
to act. We need to assert. We need to stand on common pedestal. We need to fight. We
Right.
have been fighting. The people of Jammu and Kashmir have
And
been fighting. I won't say that one political party, every political party, the mainstream political parties, the Jan Manas, the Aam Aadmi of Jammu and Kashmir has been fighting militancy since the past 3 decades, and we will fight, and we will
okay.
overcome. You keep assured, we will overcome. That's not the case. We
I-
will
I-
overcome.
I- I- Ifra Jan Center is fighting a decisive battle against terrorism, and there are a record number of tourists who have visited Jammu and Kashmir. But before you answer, if you can play the soundbite of Farooq Abdullah, he said actually the atmosphere of hatred across the country is one reason that there is growing terrorism. If we can play that soundbite.
इस तरह से आज एक बार फिर माइनॉरिटी को निशाना बना दिया गया है, तो किस तरह आप इसको देखते हैं?
देखिए, ये बहुत ही दुख की बात है कि आतंकवाद अभी भी इस रियासत में चल रहा है। बेगुनाहों को मारा जा रहा है, इसमें कोई शक नहीं है। बेगुनाह वो किसी भी मजहब से ताल्लुक रखते हैं। ये बीमारी अब बहुत बढ़ गई है। सारे वतन में नफरत जिस तरह फैलाई जा रही है, ये उसी का नतीजा भी है। आज मुसलमान को अलग खड़ा किया जा रहा है, हिंदू को अलग खड़ा कर दिया जा रहा है। कौन जिम्मेवार है? कौन नफरत फैला रहा है? अब बताइए मुझे, उस हिंदू फैमिली में क्या था? उनके पास कुछ नहीं। वो किसके दुश्मन थे? इसी के लिए। या वो जो कश्मीरी पंडित शुपायान में मारे गए, क्या कसूर था? तो इस पे होम मिनिस्ट्री में रास्ता निकालने की जरूरत है।
Ifra Jan.
Okay, my screen unmuted. Yes. So, number one, you said that we all need to be on the same page. Actually, every political party in Jammu and Kashmir has been fighting terrorism for last 30 years. So everybody is on the same page. And National Conference, being a political party that's lost 7,000 of its members to similar terror attacks. So there is no saying that you have to be on the similar page. We have been in the administration and we have also fought terrorism. But there is a fundamental difference here when we speak. Now, the BJP imposed a cost on the people of Jammu and Kashmir and promised in return that we will give you a terror-free Jammu and Kashmir. The cost that was imposed on people of Jammu, 1 crore 20 lakh people of Jammu and Kashmir, was that their land security rights were taken away, their job security rights were taken away, their domicile rights were taken away, which were not taken away from Ladakh, by the way. This was done specifically in Jammu and Kashmir. Their vote was converted from that of a state electoral assembly to a union territory. Their state was converted into a union. It was downgraded into a union territory. The elections were completely suspended for now have been suspended for a good 4 years. All this cost was imposed on the pretext that there will be a terror-free Jammu and Kashmir. And this is why today I stand and ask the BJP spokesperson, have you been able to justify the cost that you've imposed on the people of Jammu and Kashmir? They say that the number of incidents has gone down. But why aren't they telling us that the geography of terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir post abrogation of Article 370 has actually been going up? It's actually been expanding. So far, if you actually looked at the terror cases, they were limited to areas like Shupian and other areas in Kashmir. South Kashmir was primarily the hotbed. Now we see terror attacks not just in parts of Srinagar that were erstwhile considered to be safer areas, but also in Jammu. There was a recent terror attack in Sidra. There was an encounter in Rajouri, erstwhile safer area. So there is no safe area anymore. Why are you telling us this?
Ifrajan, let him respond. But before that, I wanted to ask you about what Dr. Saab said, that the growing hatred across the country also, gives a flip to terrorism.
You see, whenever there is hatred in any part of the country, it always leads to more and more hatred. And I actually agree with Dr. Farooq Saab that hatred is never the answer for hatred, but hate can always, it's always a circle. The more hate comes in, the more hate comes out. So we, the people of Jammu and Kashmir, will stand up against this hate.
Okay, R.S. Patania, respond now.
Zaffar Saab, Jammu and Kashmir is inching towards a totally terror-free area. And responding to the direct cue of the NC spokesperson, Jammu and Kashmir, which had been a seat of learning, a seat of research, a seat of spiritual attainment, a seat of sankalpa se siddhi, because philosophers, mathematicians, spiritual seekers, they came across from the world, from the globe, to seek spiritual attainment in Kashmir. Kashmir had been an abode of love. So this hatred has been promoted in Kashmir. We have been pitted. Who pitted Gujar versus Pahadi? Who pitted Jammu versus Kashmir? Who pitted Pahadi versus the Srinagar and Anantnag belt? So the point remains that we need to, and who pitted this other side of the Kashmir and this side of the Kashmir. So we have a common ancestry, we have a common background, we have a common history. So there are certain, this is what we have been making a case, sir, that there have been certain fundamentalist and fissiparous forces which have been promoting hatred on the Jammu and Kashmir soil, which have been promoting enmity between one sect, one class, one religion. That's what the Jammu and Kashmir was an happy oasis of a state. A Hindu Raja, he was very peacefully ruling Jammu and Kashmir. A Muslim king, Zainul Abidin, he was a Buddhist, he was an ancient, and he was also peacefully ruling Jammu and Kashmir. This is what we are saying, that we should work against this hatred which is being spread with vested interests on the territory of Jammu and Kashmir. This hatred needs to be fight out lock, stock and barrel from the Jammu and Kashmir soil. And these are the war cries of, what was it, this all, the Nizam-e-Mustafa? What was the war cry of the Jalib, Walib and Kalib? This is what we will come to the point. We are saying that we need to fight out this hatred. And with due respect to Farooq Saab, I absolutely did not expect such a statement from him. He needs, why is he plucking the strings of that Hindu-Muslim discord with the entire opposition as we playing, and that even at such a very, very sensitive moment, the people, he's virtually the undisputed, we could say the tall leader of Jammu and Kashmir. He need to come to the rescue. He need to call for the Hindu-Muslim Ittihad. Where is he? Why doesn't he reincarnate Sheikh Abdullah Saab's slogan on Jammu and Kashmir? So please don't try to deflect, don't try to deteriorate, don't try to add fuel to the fire. This is my very, very humble submission
Let Zaffar
to
Sahab
Farooq
come in.
Saab and
Zaffar
National
Sahab,
Conference. This is what I
different
want to contribute.
communities have been pitted against each other, and that's really complicated the situation on the ground. What do you have to say?
I think this hatred question is taking our attention away from the current debate, this
Yes.
Dangri
Yes.
incident. Well, of course, the kind of statement that Farooq Abdullah Saab has made is very important. Hatred is an issue in our country which we are battling in a different way. But this incident of terrorism has to be separated from the debate around the hatred. That has to be
Yes.
saved for another day. What I understand is that this is not any outcome of any hatred or anything that has happened in Dangri, in Rajouri, a massacre of this scale. I think, this should have been seen by Pathania Saab and other people as well, that the important point that can go to their credit as well. Over the last 3-4 years, I believe that the militant infrastructure in Kashmir is under tremendous pressure, under the kind of pressure which it hasn't faced over the last 25-30 years. So they want to expand that geographical territory to the Jammu region so that the security forces could be engaged here. And our security infrastructure probably has not taken that cue, and there is no preparedness in that direction to deal with terrorism at the same scale as it has been happening in Kashmir. So our debate is diversionary, but at the same time, the militant leadership is very much focused that way to draw the further attention of the state's infrastructure and the security establishment. So I think this Rajouri incident has to be analyzed in that direction. That have the security forces, analyze what are the challenges in Jammu region at the moment. And this is
Also,
not the
Zaffar
first
Sahab,
incident.
also, Zaffar Sahab, you raised a very important point. We're seeing a pattern here. There was an incident in Rajouri a few days ago. 2 people were killed outside an army camp. Then there was this
True.
incident at Sidra. A
True.
massive cache of arms and ammunition was recovered. And now this third incident, of course, it really vindicates that theory that the attention is focusing from the valley to Jammu region.
We need to find out an answer by putting on the table all incidents of last 3 years and then connecting the dots between them, because there is a similarity, there is a pattern. Because you see, 2 years ago, this thing happened in Punch, that there was a search operation that went on for 62 days and nothing could be found out from there. But an incident happened a day before Prime Minister's visit to Jammu, which means that there is a very much careful calibration somewhere to slip things over from Kashmir to Jammu so that the attention of the security forces, the attention of the security infrastructure could be engaged here in Jammu region. So this militancy, as Pathania Saab said, and other people in the security establishment also keep on saying, for example, DGP's press conference on 31st of December, militancy is never, terrorism is never ever about statistics. Like, the last year was the most comfortable position, that 172 terrorists being killed and only 21 civilians. Perhaps one of the best situations over last 10 or 15 years. And then on the first year of the new year, we have this, a massive incident happening in Rajouri. So a longer range view probably is required to be taken, that why is this happening in Jammu region and what could be done to plug that in.
Right. But Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, one important point that you had also touched upon earlier is the internal situation in Pakistan. Does that have a direct impact on the situation in Jammu and Kashmir? We see that there's a lot of trouble in Pakistan, political instability and economic downslide. Does that directly impact the situation in Kashmir, and would you see more escalation in the future?
See, what happens is, of course, Pakistan has a total hate India. There is no denying the fact. We've also all of us know that Pakistan uses terrorism as an instrument of state policy. There is no denying the fact. Yes, instability in Pakistan, but Pakistan has an ISI which is exclusively devoted. You have the terrorist front like the Jaish-e-Mohammed, Al-Qaeda, all of them will be operating. And they also see that there is, of course, a tacit support, maybe from a very small bit of population, but there is a support. Unless there is support for this kind of terrorism, you would not find them in any case, they cannot survive in any case. It will be like a fish out of water. It's impossible for them to survive. And therefore, these kind of things backing, any activity requires money. Any activity requires weapons. Any activity requires surveillance, security, inputs, all of it. And therefore, now now with drones coming in, the kind of weapons being supplied, the kind of ammunition being supplied to the people, even the kind of infiltration that is taking place is all indicative. And again, within our own political circles, irrespective of whichever this thing, I am a political man, but whatever you hear from, there is no requirement to make references to China. There is no requirement to make references to Pakistan. We have to fight. If amongst us, if we are not on the same page, however hard we might say, duplicity, double talks is all clearly seen. You cannot afford to be duplicacy. You have to be clear cut that yes, we are going to fight for it, and we will all fight among. You don't need to talk to the enemy for anything. You have to sort out our own home or our own house requires sorting out. Over here, you find certain amount of tacit support being given to a certain amount of groups, militants, organizations which come up. You will always find if this kind of an encouragement comes from political parties, I think then that goes totally wrong. It does not convey the correct picture that it should be.
Let Ifrajan respond. Tacit support and encouragement to the separatist forces. Ifrajan.
You see, on one hand, we are generally told that national conference and mainstream political parties are irrelevant. On the other hand, the same people will come you and tell you because Farooq Saab has made this statement, therefore terrorists are doing this. You do not want to talk about the failures of the BJP government, and you somehow find a way to blame the opposition. This has unfortunately been the mantra of the commentators on the BJP side. Here is the question. If tomorrow Dr. Farooq Abdullah Saab was to retire from politics and he was to say, I'll make no statement ever, will these killings stop? Can the respected panelists give me a guarantee that these killings will stop? And when we constantly talk about local support, I have never heard of this local support mantra when there are lynchings in other parts of the country, very clearly religiously motivated killings. I do not see this local support question coming anywhere where there are hate crimes happening across the country. But why is it suddenly that people of Jammu and Kashmir, there is a sort of inherent bigotry in saying ki nahi, in sabko katkare mein khada karo, all the people of Jammu and Kashmir should be questioned. Let's talk to all the locals. Sir, what has happened? Why don't we talk? Why is this question never raised in any other hate crime incident in any part of the state other than Jammu and Kashmir? And let me leave you with a last comment. I completely disagree with the fact that there is any local support to any terror group in Jammu and Kashmir. People of Jammu and Kashmir have been the biggest victims of terrorism. However, if Mr. Kulkarni was to say, if he was right, let me ask him a question. The kind of policies that the BJP government has actually implemented in last 3 years, one, the UT, downgrading us into a UT, taking away all the land rights, the job rights, the domicile rights, something which was not taken away from the people of Ladakh, and all the kind of clampdown that we see, would it actually increase the local support or would it actually decrease the local support? I mean, what does Mr. Kulkarni think of it, even though I believe there is no local support?
No, let R.S. Pathania, who represents the BJP, respond to that. Before I go to Zaffar Saab, let R.S. Pathania come in.
Zaffar Saab, with due respect, the way the NC spokesperson has been trying to deflect, has been trying to deviate, and never mind it, has been trying to beat about the bush, not coming to the right point, not coming to the, we could say, the heart of the controversy herein. And the way I did not want you to make such an oblique comment, but the way some mainstream and responsible politicians have tried to conduct themselves, this itself justifies the soup, I will say, the soup which was done in Jammu and Kashmir, a big change in the Kendra Sarkar's policy in Jammu and Kashmir that was unfolded on 5th of August 2019. We started with Jamhuriyat, Insaniyat, Kashmiriyat, that still remains a benchmark, but zero tolerance towards militancy. You will come, you will bleed Jammu and Kashmir, you will create disturbance, you will create unrest, you will create troubles for Jammu and Kashmir, and then even you will get away. This is height of, I could say, nonsense. Mr. Yasin Malik killing the Indian Air Force personnel in broad daylight, admitting it in an interview on a national TV, and is hosted a lunch and dinner by as many. He says, I have the opportunity to work with 5 prime ministers. So this nonsense will not work. With due respect, I'm using a harsh word. This nonsense will not work. And as Jalan said, no China, no Pakistan. India has to deal with its own. India has to deal with the terror, and India will firmly deal it. and we will stamp it out from Jammu and Kashmir, lock, stock, and barrel.
Zaffar Saab, somehow we come back to Article 370 abrogation and what was before that and what is after that. You have been keenly following the developments in Jammu and Kashmir. How do you see the situation? I think mainstream parties have been making statements in the past, but there have been incidents happening in the past, and there continue to be incidents happening now in the valley, in Jammu region, and these statistics, as far as militant killings are concerned, as far as arrival of tourists is concerned, do they matter?
You see, first of all, let's pass on a compliment to our friend Mr. Patania. He's a very sharp politician. He'll take you into history and connect it with the latest developments on the infrastructure development and tourism front. But this entire thing about Article 370 is that there is a big, huge promise that once we take this away, and then things will change completely. Of course, there have been, as I said in my opening, assessment of the situation in Rajouri, because the militants, they are feeling completely stressed in Kashmir. So they want to engage the security forces here in Jammu region. But I see this Article 370 and downgrading of the state nothing to do with the longer battle, in fighting terrorism, because events do not produce results. These are the processes which actually take us to some kind of result. The terrorism have been, Jammu and Kashmir has been fighting for last 35 years. This is an ongoing battle that needs a very sustained process. That's number one. And number two is, if I take your attention back, as Patania Sahab took us to a few centuries ago to describe that, the abode of peace. The most recent, example of peace, the evidence of peace before us was between 2004, 5 and 7, 8. Why was that changed? Why was terrorism completely down? And as General Kulkarni says that everyone should be on the same page. That probably was the only time in last 30 years when the government, security establishment, the political institutions, everyone took people along and everyone was really on the same page. People were not pointing out that who is with us and who is not without us. The intelligence is a very important question that's never advisable to be discussed on the television shows. But the most authentic and the organic intelligence that comes from the people, that comes from the local societies. If they are engaged in this entire process, you will have formidable intelligence to be able to act against terrorism, because this entire kinetic war, the using of the firepower, will never sniff terrorism out of the territory. This is an ongoing process. So I can't see that since this Article 370 happened, so there is, a pattern, there is a kind of system that is in place that can completely wipe terrorism out from Jammu and Kashmir. This still has to be a sustained process in which people's involvement in Kashmir and in Jammu and everywhere is paramount to our battle against terrorism.
Right. Zaffar Saab, the period you mentioned about, I remember there was also a dialogue going on between India and Pakistan at that time, besides other factors that you mentioned. So before we wrap up, we want to play a soundbite of Mehbooba Mufti, what she actually said after the incident.
फिर से एक बार 5 लोग, जिसमें एक छोटा 5 साल का बच्चा भी है, इस तरह से फिर से एक बार 5 लोग, जिसमें एक छोटा 5 साल का बच्चा भी है, इस तरह से वो मारा गया। और इस वक्त हम क्या कह सकते हैं, इसकी हम मजम्मत करते हैं और साथ ही क्या कहें, ये तो अल्लाह ताला बेहतर जानता है कि जो उनके घर वाले हैं उनके साथ हम हमदर्दी करना चाहते हैं और अल्लाह ताला से दुआ करते हैं उनको सब्र तहम्मुल दे, अल्लाह ताला इसको बर्दाश्त करने की। ये हमारा ही नुकसान है, जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों का नुकसान है। जब भी कोई जम्मू कश्मीर का बाशिंदा मारा जाता है, चाहे वो हिंदू हो मुसलमान हो, वो हमारा बाशिंदा है, तो इसमें क्या करें, अफसोस के बगैर और क्या कर सकते हैं। हमको तो पिछले 30 साल से यही देख रहे हैं, इधर भी बंदूक इधर भी बंदूक, बीच में लोग मारे जा रहे हैं।
Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion. That's all the time that we have. Thanks to all our panelists for joining us. That's all we have in today's show. Thanks for joining.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.